like, you guys have your own models, right? Yeah, I think Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million, but like, well, that's a model. It maybe just like you're pulling it out of the wind, and I'm doing a little bit more than pulling it out of the wind because I'm looking at like these graphs and stuff. You should absolutely buy something with Bitcoin. You should pay for Bitcoin. Go to the one restaurant in Atlanta that accepts Bitcoin and buy a steak with Bitcoin. Take a trip to El Salvador and book a hotel room in Bitcoin. It's good. I think we could get to $1 million within a decade. We could get to $1 million within 5 years, maybe, right? If things play out right.
What if I told you there's a secret pattern that could unlock the future of Bitcoin? A mind-bending mathematical phenomenon that not only explains Bitcoin's past, but might also predict its extraordinary rise to heights we've never imagined. Renowned analyst Fred Krueger believes he's cracked the code, and it all lies in the mysterious realm of power laws. From Bitcoin's adoption to its hash rate, and even its wildly fluctuating price, Krueger sees an unmistakable pattern that defies conventional wisdom. According to Krueger, Bitcoin's growth isn't just random chaos. It's a precisely orchestrated symphony governed by the laws of nature itself. And if he's right, the implications are nothing short of revolutionary. But don't take my word for it. In the latest clips from his explosive interview, Krueger pulls back the curtain and reveals the startling evidence that has the crypto world buzzing. Are you ready to have your mind blown? Then strap in and watch as Krueger takes us on a journey through the power law rabbit hole.
I'm happy that I'm helping out that model. I definitely feel like I've had an impact on the power law discussion, because it's kind of like I didn't hear about Giovanni first. I saw my friend Stephen Perrinote, who's been tweeting about this stuff for years, right? And he's always had this power law. And I was like, okay, Stephen, this is kind of cool. You're looking at things on a log basis. And he's like, yeah, power law. And it didn't really click, but then I was like, went back to it. I was like, I really love this power law stuff you're doing, Stephen. And then I published I put this thing out on Twitter, and then Giovanni just chimes in. He's like, wait, that is my power law. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, I discovered it in 2014. So I'm like, great. You're a physicist. He's got this power law. You speak my language. Let's talk, man. So I felt like, when and I get along really well with Giovanni because we can kind of we speak the same kind of language, and so, I talk to him almost every day now, and I'm just like, what do you think of this? He's like, Fred, I found this new relationship. Okay, maybe, but so I definitely think the models I think the power law model is the best way to look at Bitcoin. And it is not just a model of the price, right? It's a model of everything that's around Bitcoin, right? And I think it will give you, anybody who spends a significant amount of time with this will give you a lot of conviction to hold Bitcoin over the long haul. It's like the best reason, because here's the way I would describe it. First of all, let's just look at adoption, right? Because if you're buying into Bitcoin, you fundamentally believe that more and more and more people are going to be using Bitcoin, right? And the power law, you can start looking at, okay, how many people have 1 million sats? Okay, we can look at those addresses, right? You look at them and you're like, okay, there's 17 million people who have 1 million sats, 17 million addresses, and you can't say, well, people can have 2 addresses. Well, that's true, but the number of addresses is out there, right? It's out there on the place. Now you can look at that number leading up to today when you have 17 million of them, and you're like, oh my God, this thing goes up at a power of 2.5, right, roughly, and it's very consistent. It's like if you put it in log space, it's like a line with a slope of 2.5. It's really consistent. Then you're like, okay, well, that's great, but that's not very much Bitcoin. What about if I took 0.1 Bitcoin? You're like, okay, slope is now 2. Okay, what if I took 1 Bitcoin? Slope is now 1.4. And what if I took 10 Bitcoin? Well, the slope is now 0.7. So you have these power laws. Every single one of these things is a power law. And you're like, okay, well, that's a not chance, right? Now you take those numbers that I gave you, 0.7 for 10 Bitcoin, you take 2 for or 1.4 for 1 Bitcoin, 2 for 0.1 Bitcoin, and 2.5 for 0.01 Bitcoin. And you plot those against Bitcoin, and you find it's a power law again, going negative power law, right? So now you got power laws of power laws, okay? So the adoption is clearly a bunch of power laws, right? It's just, there's no question. And by the way, this doesn't change whether the market's going up or down, right? It's just consistently adoption that's happening. Now you look at hash rate. Hash rate itself is a power law, right? Hash rate's going up at t to the power 12. And the correlation is amazingly good. It's like 98%, right? So hash rate is t to the power 12. Then you look at price. Well, price is actually a power law too. And as crazy as Bitcoin looks like, if you just look at it in linear terms, right? You're like, wow, this thing went up like crazy in 2017, right? Did a 20x. Then it crashed and went all the way down to 3,500. Then it spent 2 years like on the floor. Then it, in late 2020, it bounced from 10,000 to 60,000. Then it spent 1 year there, double top, puked, went down to 15,000, and 12 months ago, kind of resuscitated. That vision. Most investors look at that and they're like, that's way too volatile for me, man. I do not want to have anything to do with that kind of, circus, right? But if you look at it on a long basis, like, oh my God, this thing is actually pretty steady. Gold it's really not been a useful thing for a very, very long time, right? I think gold was money in the 19th century, right? So I think, if you're looking 100 years ago, yeah, gold was kind of money, right? But gold ceased to be money a very long time ago. People say, well, you can't buy stuff, you can't buy coffee with Bitcoin. Well, you certainly can't buy it with gold either. You know what I mean? You can't do anything with gold other than bring it to a pawn shop and exchange it for dollars, right? That's about all you can do with your gold right now. So it's, I just feel like gold is not very useful. There's not really any scenario where gold's going to become like global currency of the world in the next 20 years, right? There's no growth curve to gold. There's no adoption. No, people aren't adopting gold, So I feel like, on the other hand, Bitcoin is absolutely gaining in adoption. Absolutely, by all these metrics, more and more people are using Bitcoin to store money, right? And I think that, there's a clear growth curve to Bitcoin, not just to the price, but to the actual adoption of Bitcoin. There's growth in kind of Bitcoin technology, wallets, Lightning, a lot of things now, layer twos. So there's, Bitcoin has this growth story that gold just doesn't have. And so, I feel like the gold guys are just, they're just kind of like yearning for a world that never, wasn't even around when they were a kid. It's maybe around when their grandparents were kids, but it's just kind of like science fiction, at this point, I don't see that it's a gold. I mean, gold is just not a contender for anything that's kind of in the 21st century, in my opinion. It's like this ancient, I kind of agree with Keynes. It's a barbarous relic, of a bygone era, So it's kind of cool. I own gold, but, I'm not selling my gold that I own, but, it's, I wouldn't recommend anybody buy gold here.